Welcome back to Aging in Place Strategies and Answers. And I'm excited to start this show and let you know that this information that we're going to provide today can be very helpful to you if you're wondering about how your ability to age in place will be. One of the things that we think about is home modifications, but another big piece of this is the correct equipment that will allow you to age in place independently as your healthcare needs change. And I can't emphasize that enough because that is going to make all the difference in the world. And so you're going to hear us say some terms today. We might say DME, and I want you to know that we're talking about durable medical equipment, and that's the big stuff, the hospital beds and the wheelchairs and things like that. And then we're going to be talking about adaptive equipment. And this is where I feel like the next level of being able to stay independent occurs. And I have two professionals on with me today, so I'm not going to waste any time. I want to introduce them to you. Knowing the best way to care for someone and having great equipment is often the difference between success and failure. And I often say sometimes people bring their loved ones home and they can't even get them out of the car. And what happens is they turn the car around and they send it back to the hospital because of that one simple step. That's the first failure. So in 2015, 10 years ago, Cindy and Christina founded aecorner.com. And so that's Adaptive Equipment Corner because they're speech and physical therapists and they were in the home working with patients that were really struggling to maintain their independence, and their care partners were struggling to do it correctly without getting hurt. And what we have found in aging and caregivers is there's just not a lot of training, is there?
Yeah,
There's just not.
right.
It's like, here's your loved one, take it home. Have a nice
Hmm.
day. And I often joke because my daughter has two little babies, and it's like, here you go, just take them home. Oh,
Yeah.
and then you take them back to the doctor, like, well, you're not doing this right. Well, you told me to take them home. So
Right.
this is the way it is with seniors as well. So if you're finding yourself in this moment, I just want you to know that you're not alone. But my listeners really want to create an aging in place strategy. And you found in your scope of practice that that was the same, that your patients wanted to stay home and they wanted to be successful, and their care partners were really dedicated and motivated to help them, but they just didn't always have the tools or the experience. So it's so much easier, and that's where your mission really came into being, to increase senior and caregiver safety during the daily care that's being provided, and then to help improvement and help maintain the individual's highest level of functional independence at home. Right?
That's correct.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Cindy and Christina, know that when you have the right information and the right tools, it's just so much easier to make that goal a reality. So I'm going to be saying their website a couple different times, but don't worry, it's going to be in the show notes. But their website, aecorner.com, has become a trusted resource for those needing adaptive equipment, and also need to learn the techniques involved in using them. So welcome Cindy and Christina from aecorner.com. I would love for you to introduce yourselves so that
Mhm.
my listeners know who you are. So whoever wants to go first, go first.
Okay, go ahead, Cindy. My name is Cindy. I'm a physical therapist. I have been practicing for about 32 years now, and the majority of my time has been in the home health realm. And yeah, we are co-owners of Adaptive Equipment and Caregiving Corner.
And my name is Christina. Linda, thanks for having us on here. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I am a speech language pathologist, and most of my career, which has been probably about 25 years now, has been spent working, the majority of it's been working with individuals in long-term care. I did probably a brief stint, maybe 4 or 5 years in home health. And that's when we started Adaptive Equipment and Caregiving Corner. So yeah, and the majority of my time I really enjoyed working with individuals, residents that are living with dementia and people that
Interesting.
are swallowing. Yeah, so that's kind of my area that I really enjoy working with. So, but now we're doing the Adaptive Equipment and Caregiving Corner. We aren't practicing. We aren't giving treatments out anymore, and it's been a great change.
Great transition.
Yeah, it's been a great transition in our careers. Yeah.
Love the education.
Yes, absolutely. Which I love because I had physical therapy in my foot, and I think, they're all like 20 somethings, maybe 30 something. So, as we mature, then it was fun. It's so great to see how you're using your skill set because you've got that maturity and you've got that experience and you've got that passion and desire to help people. So I met you guys at an event, although I knew of your reputation far beyond that. And to watch you guys work in front of an audience is amazing. Like these gals are using this equipment. They're saying, okay, here's the equipment. Look how great it is. It's brand new. It's just came on the market, which gets me all excited because then I know it's possible to do more patient care at home. But then you're like, don't do this, but you can do this, but look at what it can do. And you just sit there with your mouth open and going, oh my goodness, this is going to be life-changing for people, which is why I definitely wanted to have you guys on, and I appreciate you agreeing to do this. So in my marketing role, I go in and out of retirement communities all day long. And I was in this one retirement community, and this lady was in a wheelchair. And bless her heart, she was trying to use her strength to motor towards the elevator.
Right.
But when she got there and pushed the button, the door opened, she couldn't get on. That space where the carpeting would end and then it's kind of open there and there's that trough of, pieces of metal and just, it's a transition. And so she just couldn't do it. And so I thought, you know what? This is her life. It's her wheelchair, giving her the independence to do that herself and to problem solve. I just stood behind, but another resident came up and wanted to give this resident a great big push. And when that happened, because she did it 3 times, I almost saw the lady tip out of the wheelchair.
Sure.
So when you're not a professional or when you don't have experience, you don't realize that can happen. And so this is what I'm saying. This is one of the values of having somebody who knows what they're doing and then can share that information with you. So Cindy, you're the physical therapist and you graduated from Wash U with a master's in physical therapy. And then Christina, you graduated from Eastern Illinois University with a master's in communication disorders and science. And so you are a speech therapist.
Yes, correct. That is correct.
I just sometimes people don't always understand. We understand physical therapy, but sometimes we don't understand the full realm of what a speech therapist can do. So just for the value of my listeners, would you just share that? Because they may say, well, I have dementia, but they're having me do speech and I don't really understand why. So if you could do that for me, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Working in long-term care, when you go in and evaluate a patient, you tell them who you are, and you're not alone, and your listeners aren't alone in not knowing what a speech therapist does. You get that a lot. You get a lot of, well, honey, I know how to talk.
Yes, right.
Speech therapy since I was in school.
Yes.
They think of it as the actual sound that you make to communicate. And speech therapy is so much more than that. So besides the sounds that you use to articulate the language, it's the actual language. And so being able to understand the message and also communicate your message to your listeners. So it's that, that communication ability between 2 communication partners. And so when we're talking language like that, it also lends itself to cognition. So people that are living with dementia, they lose that ability to put together a coherent thought and make their wants and needs known through that verbal, through verbal communication. And so that's where speech therapy comes in. There's nothing we can do as far as fixing dementia, but we can certainly try to help make that communication between the loved one and the care partner a little bit easier and make them understand the process of dementia. And so we do that also with dementia, and some other progressive disorders come swallowing difficulties or dysphagia. And so what we will do is we will work with the person that is, for example, living with dementia. As it progresses, they lose the ability to feed themselves, or they lose the ability to understand that when I am hungry, that I have to eat, and they lose the ability to understand that chewing and feeding and all that. And so that's kind of where we come in again, mostly training the caregiver on how to best get the most nutrition and hydration, which is super duper important. So we touch on all of those areas. If somebody might have had a stroke, and so they've lost the strength in one side of their body, which includes your muscles of speech, are paired muscles as well, so you see that facial droop. So we will work with them to try to get that neural pathway, find that array around that neural pathway to get back that skill for them. So speech therapy is a lot more than just not being able to say S, L, or R.
Absolutely. And Cindy, with physical therapy too, I mean, this is huge. So I'll just relate it back to my recent fall and where I broke my foot, and my brain adapted really fast. So having physical therapy can really be advantageous. Why start physical therapy quickly?
Well, the thing is the longer that you are down, doesn't matter what you're doing, the longer you're down, you are losing strength quickly. So that's one thing, getting people up, getting people moving within limitations of, for example, your ankle, if you're limited on weight bearing or things like that, we're in there teaching you how to adapt to that weight bearing status, but yet be up, be moving, trying to start, depending on restrictions, trying to start some strengthening, because the muscle loss is just astronomical. It's happened so quickly.
It's such a cruel joke.
It is a cruel
joke.
It's
so easy to lose muscle mass.
It is.
It takes so much effort to put muscle mass back on.
That's right.
Yes.
It takes a lot of effort to get it back. Yeah. So that's the importance of just getting up, getting moving, staying, doing what you can functionally while you're trying to heal.
And they're doing prehab also, like if people are getting joint replacements and stuff, not only rehab, which is rehabilitation afterwards, but prehabilitation. So getting yourself ready for a knee replacement or a hip replacement.
Yeah, because the stronger you go in, the better you're going to be when you come out.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, we know that. So important to have this information because, things do happen. Life happens, and it's not always easy. But what I learned very quickly is that your body, the way it's made, will adapt really quickly. And it will, and it kind of learns to do workarounds.
Yes.
And so that's what your physical therapist is there to help you to kind of do the workaround and kind of figure that out. But also as your brain's adapting, you can learn new things. So I also want this to be very cathartic for people this morning because through no fault of our own, we just find ourselves in these places where we do need extra help. And we're going to sometimes have to rely on other people. But if we can find that independence ourselves through adaptive equipment, wouldn't that be really awesome? And as a care partner, if you could help your loved one or the person you're caring for get to a better place of independence, wouldn't you want to do this? And then I want you to calm down, because I know when I'm talking, I feel like I'm mind reading. That's just part of who I am. I'm a good mind reader sometimes, but I'm thinking that you're wondering, oh my gosh, this sounds expensive. And so we want to assure you today that we understand. We are in the trenches with people. We've done this. We've got maturity. We've got professionalism. We've got wisdom. And that's what you're going to get today. So let's get to some of our questions that we decided would be best for my listeners today. So I have a couple questions for you guys that I wanted to ask so that my listeners can get some extra help understanding how to help someone with personal care and mobility or some transfers. Because I can tell you this, when we go into the home on the private duty piece, we see some stuff that we're like, well, you may do that, but we can't do that. Like
Right.
that is going to lead to a fall, or that is going to lead to an injury. So what
Right.
are some simple, affordable pieces of adaptive equipment that can make a big difference in keeping a loved one safe during daily tasks like bathing, dressing, or using the toilet? Just the basics of everyday life, right?
Yep.
Right, right. A lot of things come down to, especially when you're trying to function. Toilet, let's take that for example,
It's huge.
or comfy chair or bed. A lot of times it comes down to the height of those things.
Yes.
So what are we looking at with the toilet? If the toilet is too low and we don't have the strength to get up, that's an obstacle. So something very simple is like a toilet riser. We usually suggest that you have some handles on that toilet riser as well, because a good hand placement can make all the difference in the world. When we get up and down from a regular chair, there's not really many surfaces that we stand up from without using our hands. So the toilet's going to be the same thing. We need a good hand placement, and that doesn't mean the toilet paper holder or the towel rack or something like that, because those things are not made for pushing off of or pulling up from. But a simple toilet riser, I prefer the ones that bolt to the toilet. And Linda, now they have the ones that actually go under your existing seat. So they're not so, right in your face when you walk into
Right.
the bathroom. They go under your existing seat. They're more comfortable.
It's something you might, your loved one, if your loved one's living with dementia, that
Right.
they might recognize too. I know it sounds kind of silly, but if
Right.
it's their own toilet seat,
Right.
that's something that they're used to seeing. And so if you
Right.
just
Rather
stick
than a
it,
big
and
plastic.
that's exactly,
thing.
it's just stuck on the top of it. That's
Right.
not mine. I don't know what's happening here. So
Right.
So
Right.
I just pictured some people laughing about, oh yeah, our toilet holder thing now has been pulled off the wall, or the
Yes.
or the towel bar that's right in front of the toilet.
It is so common. You're
That's right.
not alone. We're not laughing at you. We're laughing
Nope.
with
That's
you,
right.
because this is
Yep.
what we see and we know. But this is the
Yep.
value of professional advice, and two, like you said, the ones that bolt, you're more balanced, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Less risk of
Sure is.
fall.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's exactly right. Same thing with the comfy chair, especially if our loved one has had a recent decline or recent hospitalization. That little bit of increased weakness can make all the difference in getting up and down from their seat on the couch or their recliner or something like that. So a lot of times we're looking at what can we do to raise the height of that just a little bit, even 2 or 3 inches, whether that be a platform that's built that the recliner sits on top of, furniture risers for the couch, or a chair that has standard legs. Just a few inches could make a world of difference in someone getting up and down from their comfy chair.
Wonderful.
It also applies to the bed. Our beds right this now are so high,
Very cool.
very tall to get onto. If you have a loved one that's trying to sit on the bed and dress, if their feet can't touch the floor, that is a huge fall risk of sliding right off the side of it.
And it still counts. If you're sitting on your bed and you just slide down to the floor,
That's a fall.
it's still a fall.
It's still
It's
a
still
fall.
a fall. We hear that too. People are like, oh no, I didn't fall. I gently lowered myself to the floor from
Right.
the bed, or I slid down the wall. It's still a fall.
Yeah.
It still
Yeah.
counts.
Counts
You
as
need
a
to tell
fall.
somebody.
And
That's
I
right.
love, and I'm just gonna say, for the benefit of our team that's here today, that those teeny tiny little footstools,
Oh, yeah.
do you love them or hate them?
Hate them. Hate them.
Mm-mm.
The first thing is those teeny tiny footstools are usually about 8 inches tall
Yeah.
plus. And that is not a regular size step. And if someone is weak, they don't take regular steps well. So those are way too high. Our go-to is an aerobic platform step. Because you have the adjustability, you have the nice width, you usually have a non-skid surface on the top of it. Makes a very nice step at the bedside. If you have to bring your person up to the bed height. My first go-to is, can we lower the bed? Can we bring it
Absolutely.
down? But if you can't, we do the aerobic step, and I always like to add a bed rail, just because of the extra handhold,
Mhm.
the extra support, getting up from a lying down position makes a huge difference. Makes a huge difference.
It does. We find in my line of sight as I look at seniors, those falls take their toll, whether you want to admit it or not, but sometimes there's spine compression fractures. Then
Right.
it's a pelvic fracture, then it's a hip fracture. And each time you have a fall and something like that, you lose your core strength. So being able to lift yourself to a seated position can be hard. And this is why these things are being recommended. And I was thinking while you were talking, it's so funny that we think, oh, well, we have to step up to the bed. We seldom think we're going to lower the bed. Like that's just something in
That's right.
everybody's line of sight that they just don't think about, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had a client who her son took her bed frame away and put her box spring and her mattress on a 4x4 deck posts. It was perfect height. She was in the 5'4", 5'5" range, perfect height for her, worked very well. Now aesthetics, you can give or take, but still, if it means maintaining your function
And
then-
dignity.
and dignity, yeah, that
Right.
makes a huge difference.
And
yeah.
that you can do it yourself. And this
Right.
is the whole thing, is being able to manage your own tasks
That's right.
with as
That's right.
little assistance as possible. Okay.
Right.
That's what we're talking
right.
about here. Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that.
Absolutely.
Bathing. I don't think we talked about bathing.
Mm-mm.
Right. The big thing with the bathing is, what kind of setup do you have? Do you have a walk-in shower? Do you have a tub shower?
Combo.
Yeah. What is that? That's my first question usually. And my next question is how do you do, first of all, if you have a tub shower combo, how do you do stepping over? Are we safe stepping over? Is there some balance issues? Grab bars, mounted grab bars are our first go-to if you're going to be stepping over. Not a huge fan of the suction cup grab bars. They are not reliable.
Would you say that one more time, please?
Not a big suction cup grab bar. Now, I will say, I'm going to preface this. We, on our YouTube channel, Adaptive Equipment Corner channel, I do show one suction cup grab bar that I would recommend as a last resort. I was very impressed with it, but as a blanket, I would not go with those. I would get the mounted grab bars. And then if you're having trouble stepping over and if you're a higher fall risk, then we switch to a tub transfer bench. The bench that is a little bit longer, partially sits outside the tub, that allows you to sit down in a seated position. You're bringing your legs over the tub and then you're scooting over. So we're talking about a tub transfer bench a lot of times.
And then combine that with a handheld shower.
Yes, handheld shower.
For continued independence in showering and
That's
bathing.
right.
So get the handheld shower, bring it down to the bench, and then
Right.
when you slide in, then you're able to maintain your own personal hygiene.
Right.
with
And,
the handheld
and
shower.
especially, non-skid surfaces in the bottom of the tub, of course, always. And then if they're having difficulty reaching, let's say their feet or their back, we're looking at, different types of scrub brushes, long-handled sponges, things like that.
Yeah, I had to use all that when I had my
Yeah.
foot injury. So fortunately, and I had my mother living in my home with me at her advanced stage, and I did have a suction cup grab bar, and guess what? Fell off in the middle of the night. I thought I didn't know what had happened. I'm like, what
Yes.
was that? And so I thought it was
Yes.
my mom who fell, and it was a suction cup hand. I'm like, okay, this thing is worthless, and tossed
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
yes, all that. And so we think about seniors, or we think about adult, people who need this because of compromised mobility and things like that. But you might be having hip or knee surgery. And so if
That's
you're listening, these are
Yes.
pro tips. I'm just telling you. I
Yes.
had to use them too. And I had the shower bench, the handheld,
Yep.
but I had enough strength to get up and down and do my
Right.
thing. But yeah, so I had to use all that, and I was trying to recall the techniques that the therapist had taught my mother and her
Right.
caregiver so that she could perform as much of her bathing function as possible. So yeah,
Mhm.
all of
Mhm.
that matters.
Right.
And it matters to be proactive, especially if you
huge.
know you are going to have a surgery, hip or knee. Please, please, please get prepared ahead of time. It makes it so much easier and it makes that coming home so much better.
Yes, you feel human. You feel human and you feel like you can get better because you can see yourself being able to manage some of your care. Otherwise, it
Right.
gets very scary and then our minds race away with us, right?
Oh, sure.
Right.
About, oh no,
Absolutely.
I'm not doing this, I can't do it. Then you're worried, then you have a fall or whatever. So, yeah,
Mhm.
safety and getting prepared is so important. So, I mentioned that many times we are discharges happen either from skilled or from hospital, and you saw people on the home health side and you saw people in
Okay.
skilled, but how often really is the care partner trained to
Right.
Right.
handle some of this mobility and transfers? And so, what are your top tips or some of your go-to techniques for helping someone move safely without risking injury, either to
Mhm.
themselves or to the care person who's performing that care task?
Yeah. In long-term care, when we, in rehabilitation, it was a rehab center is what it was. But we used to, before COVID, as therapists, we used to do home safety evals. So we would take our patient, would see them for a number of weeks. And of course, when you write your goals, it's always to return home. And so what kind of things do we need to work on to get you back to that level? And then a few weeks before discharge, we would actually take the patient to the home and go through the home and check those goals that we had set and make sure that they were meeting that. And if we needed to come back, then we had a couple of weeks where we could actually go, okay, you know what, getting out of the car and getting into the home is going to be an issue.
Right.
We don't do that anymore. We hardly do that anymore as rehabilitation centers go into the home and do that quick little evaluation to make sure that transition from your care in your facility
Right.
back to home
Correct.
is going to be there. So and Cindy and I, when we started adaptive equipment and caregiving corner, we that's kind of one of the reasons why we started selling a subscription to it. So you can go to aecorner.com and get a subscription to our library of videos. But we were seeing that therapists weren't going into the homes, and so it was creating this gap, especially during COVID.
Right.
Oh, yes,
People were all that care was falling on the family caregiver, and they weren't trained.
absolutely.
So what we started doing is making these videos to show caregivers how to provide that safe care and to set the home up for that transition back from the facility back to home. So, because nobody wants to go back to the hospital doesn't want you back. You
No,
don't want to go back to the hospital. Your loved one doesn't want to go back to the hospital. Medicare doesn't want you to go back to the hospital.
Yeah.
So what can we do to bridge that gap between the skilled care they were getting at the facility and the care they're going to need at home? So
Mhm.
that's kind of where we came up with our caregiver series.
yes,
And it's a series of training videos.
Right.
Um,
On
and
the
sh-
physical
Yeah.
aspect of that, what I would tell caregivers, the big thing is that, if you can be at any of the sessions, of course, be at the sessions at the
yes,
skilled nursing or at the hospital. But still, there is a huge difference between
Mhm.
that and coming home.
And all
Um,
that's, I mean, sometimes what we'll see is that if you sit through those like you go through a hip or a knee replacement, you have to bring your caregiver with you and you get an hour's worth of training. The caregiver does on what to expect
Right.
when you bring them home. You don't have questions then, right? It's when you get
no,
home where, oh man, I should have asked that. Oh, I
Yeah.
should have asked that,
Yeah. So
So-
that's kind of the follow up with the care videos.
Mhm.
But as a caregiver, my biggest suggestion to the caregivers is, I know that you want to take care of your loved one, and that's what you're doing, but you've also got to take care of yourself. It's a huge factor is body mechanics, especially if you are having to exert a lot of effort to help them.
yes,
And that means using your legs to lift, not your back. That means keeping your caregiver close to you when you are assisting them, maybe from a chair to their wheelchair. That means you letting them do as much as they can, not trying to just jump in and take over and do everything. And that means verbal communication, talking through the steps. You've got to communicate with one another, knowing what's going to happen, especially if you're doing a pretty hefty transfer.
Mhm.
You've got to know, okay, who's counting and on what number are we going, and
Right.
getting in position.
Are there some tactile cues that you
Yeah.
could give your loved one by just touching them? Maybe your person isn't as verbal or they have mild
Right.
cognitive impairment.
Mhm.
Is there some kind of tactile thing that you could do to say, okay, when, I'm going to count to three, 1, 2, 3,
Yeah, kind of
so,
rocking
yeah,
forward.
so there's tactile cues too.
Yeah. But it's huge in the fact that the caregiver has to remember that they've got to protect themselves, because they get injured and then the whole thing is done.
We always say you
So-
got to take care to care.
Yeah, absolutely. And so sometimes when we go into the home and we're asking about the transfer, how did you get them here? Because we know that they're not weight bearing, right? So how did you
Yeah.
get them in the bed?
Yeah.
Well, they had 911 do it, or the
Mhm.
person just picked them up and put them in there. And they said that's not
Mhm.
something that a health professional is going to be able to do
No.
because we will get hurt. So these are
Right.
going to be our recommendations. So, and so let's talk about that mobility piece a little bit. We see walkers in the home, and but we don't see a lot of pivot pads.
Right.
But you guys probably have some videos on your website that really can help take so much of the weight off the care partner by utilizing the adaptive equipment for these kinds of transfers, right?
Yeah, one of the things, especially with bed mobility, that's a tough one, especially
Yes.
if your person can't scoot up in bed or over in bed or anything like that. One of the things that we really like is it's called a tubular slide sheet. Very inexpensive, like you can get one for $20, $25 on Amazon.
That's
Sorry,
okay.
not promotion. I'm not.
We are not paid by
We're
Amazon.
not, yeah.
There you go. There's the disclaimer.
That's right. But a slide sheet, it's a tubular sheet and it actually slides on itself.
It's
So
nylon.
it really reduces the friction. Now, it doesn't take it all away, but it certainly makes it easier when you're trying to move them and get them positioned in bed or turn them on their side or things like that. Even going from a lying down to sitting position on the side of the bed, it makes it much easier. As far as getting up and pivoting, we don't have a video on using like a standing pivot pad, but there are items out there, and we can only do videos on what we can get our hands on, unless we have to pay for it out of our pockets. So if anybody's out there listening and has a product and would like for us to video it, send it
There
our
you
way.
go.
That's right.
I
But
love it.
yeah,
I've
the
only
thing
seen
with-
it demonstrated once, but it was very
Right.
helpful. But yeah, what
Yes.
would you recommend?
And it's
then
not
to
for
help-
everybody.
No, no,
Right.
no. Yeah, you got to know
Right.
what you're doing.
Yeah, the big thing is it just the pivot pads, if it's just a single pad, you have to, if it's a standing and a weight bearing thing, you really need some training on it because it
Right.
takes the client or the loved one has to have a little bit of core stability
Mhm.
in being able to maintain the tightness of their body. Because if you're pivoting them and their body is not tight, you're just twisting their trunk. You're not twisting their feet. Because when you apply weight to that pad, it's going to increase friction a little bit. So it takes a little bit of practice. They are very good in a lot of situations. There are some other pivoting apparatuses that you actually can have them stand on, and it has a bar to hold and you can pivot. So there's a lot of good things out there.
Yeah.
Again, we always, you have to be an advocate for yourself and your loved one. And if you have an idea, bring it up to the therapist, bring it up to the doctor, see if you can figure out what was going to be, the best for your situation. Because there's so much out there. But you just have to know what there is.
Yeah.
There's even like a sit to stand. I mean, let's say your person doesn't have the best, strongest core strength and stuff. So, it's a device. It's a more like durable medical equipment because it's kind of expensive and heavy duty, where you could actually get them. And if they could at least hold themselves up just for a little bit, or some of them even come with little pads that the person would sit on.
Yeah, so
then you
sling
could
or something.
just- Yeah, and then you could just swing them around and then lower them into that. I think we would probably first say, there are body mechanics that if you attend to make sure you pay attention to those body mechanics. I've seen little tiny female physical therapists block a patient's knee and be able to stand this big guy up and pivot him into a wheelchair.
Right.
But it's just knowing what those body mechanics are. And, you know, I think a lot of times our family caregivers tend to want to do that bear hug kind of thing where, you know, where that puts them at risk. But there are, you know, first would probably be more of the knowing the body mechanics to save yourself, and then knowing that there are other pieces of equipment, but you really need to have somebody, you probably need to find out what is your loved one capable of doing, because you don't want them ending up on the floor.
And the best resource really is, like we said, skilled nursing community, where they're coming out of their hospital. Talk to the physical therapy department. As the person who's taking them home, you have the right to that information. They should give it to you. And actually, they will welcome those questions. You know, how best can I, and is there any equipment that I really need to have in the home? And so, because I'm such a good mind reader, I just know that people are wondering about cost. And you said that too, that sometimes these things are very expensive. But I do want you to know that sometimes just being smarter and being better educated also helps you to reduce the cost of what you're going to spend. So Medicare pays for some of this also, and lending closets are some options.
So let me talk a minute about Medicare, and then I'm going to have you talk about lending closets. So Medicare, you always need to find out, because there is a list of durable medical equipment, the bigger stuff, the hospital beds, the wheelchairs, those types of things that they will cover. They don't typically cover bathroom items. So it's considered a non-necessity, which I don't know who brought that, who came up with that, but usually the bathroom items aren't covered. So if you are purchasing that, you need to really look at the specifications, take good measurements, because a lot of times you cannot return a bathroom item because of the hygiene. So they won't let you return it. So you really want to make sure, if you're getting that tub transfer bench or you're getting a toilet riser or something like that, you know the specifications, weight limit, those types of things on the
Yeah. And who it like their height, take into effect the height, and then of course the weight of the person who's using this, as you mentioned. Yes,
that's right. That's exactly right. And then if they can't get it covered by insurance, you want to talk a little bit about our resources on that?
Yeah. So one of our, I mean, we probably tell people about Health Equipment Lending Closets, which the acronym is HELP, or Health Equipment Lending Programs. We probably tell people about this, I don't know, 5 or 6 times a week.
Yeah.
And so a health equipment lending program is usually a not-for-profit, and they collect gently used pieces of equipment in the community. They refurbish it, they sanitize it, and then they lend it out for low or no cost to communities, to people in their community, to residents in their community. We get people that will call us, Linda, and they will say, I got to go get my mom from the hospital tomorrow, and I don't know what I need to get. Or we have people say, you know what, I had to go get my parent from the nursing home. They were coming home and I didn't know what they needed. So I just went and got a whole bunch of stuff. And now I've got all this stuff.
I heard that too.
Didn't even
know. And so that's where we feel like these lending closets come in handy is, borrow the equipment, make sure that it works. If you want to go to the lending closet and go, okay, I think we're going to need this. I think we're going to need this. And then if you don't need it, then you could just give it back to them. And there's no money in your pocket, or minimal money out of your pocket. So on our website, under our resources, so aecorner.com, if you go to the resources menu up in the header, one of the listings we have is gotdme.com, and it is a national, or .org, I'm sorry. It is a national lending closet directory, and it's for lending closets throughout the entire United States. So you type in your zip code or your name and your city and state, and then you can find out where those lending closets are, because those are really best kept secrets.
Yeah.
And so
too. You would have to probably know somebody or looked for a donation place, because they take donations too.
Yes. That's right. That's exactly right.
That's how they get their equipment. So all that stuff you have at home, people.
Donate it. That's exactly right. Donate it. Yeah. Lots of times fraternal organizations might have it, the Moose, the Elk, VFW, they might have a little lending closet. Sometimes in your community, you never know who might have started just a very informal lending closet, or maybe, Uncle Steve's wheelchairs stuck in the basement down under the stairs. And,
Yeah.
Maybe you could borrow that. Churches, religious organizations, lots of times they will have pieces of equipment that they use for people that go to their church, and maybe they would lend it out to you. But that'd be the first thing I would check with, to help cut down cost. Another thing is, another resource that we give out is your assistive technology, or your AT program, assistive technology. Every state has an AT program. We have on our resource, we have another national directory to find your assistive technology program, because every assistive technology program has to have they call it reuse, I think, with
reuse.
assistive technology. Yeah, but they'll have a reuse program. Maybe you can borrow something from them, and if it doesn't work in your situation, then you can just give it back, and you're out minimal to no money. So
what kinds of things might be assistive technology?
That's it. Yeah, and that's a great question, because I think people, when they hear assistive technology versus adaptive equipment, assistive technology, they think it's more like smart home stuff, or computers or augmentative communication devices. But it is synonymous. Those two terms are synonymous. Mobility devices, lift chairs, smart home stuff. Also, I mean, it can be any of that stuff that you can see if they actually have in their linen closet.
Absolutely.
The one caveat I would mention to my listeners, and I know you'll agree with this, is if you're borrowing equipment that really hasn't been checked out, okay? Make sure that it's functional, because I know that sometimes the brakes on walkers will not work, or maybe a knee scooter that was borrowed from somebody, maybe those brakes aren't really working properly. It might not be at the right height for you. So just check out that equipment before you hand it over to somebody who you want to use, and then it could cause an inconvenience, but it's easily fixed. And again, you can find the parts to fix those things, but it is a value. So one of our last questions that I want us to talk about is, it is overwhelming, right? Having somebody who might have limited mobility, who is having a more difficult time toileting, bathing, dressing, and getting in and out of bed. And the value of what we do as professionals is that we can break it down into its smallest piece to make it simple. So when we talk about home modification, that's super important if you want to age in place. Where should somebody start first, in your opinion, when they're thinking about making their home more safe and more accessible?
I think you start with the small stuff. I think you start first with where are your problem areas? What are you seeing now that's a problem area? What are you maybe forecasting that is going to be a problem area in the future? And kind of make a plan to tackle those in little bits and pieces. So the first, a lot of what we do, we don't do large home modifications. We do more triage type of things, especially during that transition home from a skilled nursing or something like that. So we're looking at, are the pathways clear for whatever type of assistive device that our loved one's using, whether that's a wheelchair or a walker, a power chair, something like that. What's the lighting? Is the lighting good, especially for that pathway from the bed to the bathroom? What are we looking at as far as the flooring? Do we have a lot of area rugs and throw rugs? And what can we do about that as far as either securing them down or taking them up? What is their comfy chair situation, the toilet situation? All of those little things can make a huge difference for a start. And then from there, you start looking at, okay, if this is a place that I am going to stay and be in the future, we all are aging, so we're gonna have some type of a decline. What does that look like? What's the size of the bathroom? Does that need to be modified? What is my shower situation? Maybe I'm getting in the shower tub combo right now on a transfer bench, but maybe in the future I'm not gonna be able to do that.
Right.
So those are things that we kind of look at. The other thing is getting into the home.
Yeah,
How
like
am
you
I getting,
mentioned earlier,
yeah,
just getting into
how am I getting in and out of the home?
to go to
And
doctor's appointments.
exactly. Or, if I'm going to be in this home by myself, am I safe? Can I get out of this home if I have an emergency? Can I get out on my own? So
Exactly.
looking at those situations and thinking about modifications, a lot of times initially we have somebody that maybe having to use a walker when they're out and about in their home. They have a 2-story home. They can't get the walker upstairs. That's where we jump in and say, hey, let's check out a linen closet. Let's get you another walker. Let's leave one upstairs.
Right.
Let's leave one downstairs. Maybe we use a rail and a cane doing the transition on the stairs. So all kinds of small kind of triage things, then looking at the bigger picture for the future as far as what needs to be modified.
And there are all kinds of checklists
Yeah.
out on the
Yes.
internet. You Google
Yeah.
home safety checklist and you're going to find a ton of them. And Cindy and I are no exception. If you go to our video series, all of we have a home safety toolkit. It's got a checklist on there. You take that checklist, you go through it, and you check the areas that you're concerned with,
Right.
and then you can kind of break them into little bite-sized pieces. Also, if you have somebody that does home mods or a handy person, have them come through the home
Right.
and give you a list of things, and then you can kind of break it into little bite-sized pieces. It doesn't have to be all done at once, but at least having that list that you could check off a little bit at a time. What can I do? What do I need to pay somebody to do, kind of thing. I think that peace of mind, having that checklist, and then also having that list of things that you could do, I think that's huge, short of just having somebody come in. I mean, and there are services out there, home
Yes.
modification services out there where an OT
Yes.
will come through your home and they will tell you, this is what I would do. And I mean, it is big home modification stuff, so, I mean, really the options are endless, but a lot of us don't have the finances to do
No,
something like that.
right.
Starting
Right.
small, and working your way up.
Right.
And we talk to clients too. I think I had somebody on the phone the other day and he goes, "Oh, I got a stair lift guy coming out to my house." And all I could think of is she's not even walking at this point, right? So why are you, but this is because you are not the professional. And I always advocate for professional advice. So let's just play this out. He puts a stair lift in for somewhere between $11,000 and $20,000. I don't know, but I'm just going to say over probably 10. And his wife cannot really walk at this point. So how would you utilize a stair lift? Now, maybe like you said, big picture, but let's just think about the basics. I'm bringing my loved one home, getting in and out of the house, going to the toilet, getting in and out of bed. Those are things people are going to do all day long. And so that's where we start. So don't start thinking about hundreds of thousands of dollars and putting an elevator in and all this other stuff. You still have to be able to access those items, and you can rebuild strength. Cindy and Christina, in their jobs, they've helped hundreds of patients improve and get better. So that's the other part of today's program is you can get better and you can use adaptive equipment, right? I mean, you guys are living proof. You've seen patients. I know I improved. So this is a feel good. And then for you to know that we aren't talking about thousands of dollars and there are other things that can help. And I love your website. That's so fun. So aecorner.com is really where you can get all kinds of resources. I happened to catch you one day and you had just unpacked this tray. I don't know if you remember this series, but it was a tray for somebody who has, a familiar tremor or maybe Parkinson's, and they could carry drinks on this tray because this tray just swirled around. I'm like, what in the world? But people are inventing things all day long. COVID saw an explosion of stuff. And I was out in Arizona on vacation and was going through I think they have a huge flea market, and happened to see that you could get portable ramps. So now go travel, go have a nice life. You can take a portable ramp with you. you know.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's just so much out there. So thank you so much for sharing that. I feel for the care partner, the person who's providing the care, of course, because many of us are unpaid, and we do it because it's what we do, and we see it as a big help to the person that we're caring for. But I like to offer a caregiver tip. Have you guys got one today, either individually or corporately?
Yeah. No.
Well, I just usually, yeah, mine big one again is with the caregivers, always let your loved one do as much as they can. Because again, we know you love them, you know you want to jump in there and take care of them. But if you are doing everything, you are wearing yourself out quicker.
Yep.
So let them do as much as they can.
Yeah, that's the best. I think that's the best piece of advice. And then also, don't be afraid to ask for help.
Right.
There's a whole industry out here of people in caregiver industry almost, that where we, the resources are there, the services are there. We want to help.
Right.
Don't be afraid to ask for help, because it's okay. It doesn't make you less of a person. It actually doesn't make you weak. It makes you stronger.
That's right.
To be able to ask for help.
When you don't get the knowledge or the education that you need, then we are just following fear and anxiety, and then all those question marks. And so that just doesn't really solve or help. So now you have Christina and Cindy from aecorner.com, and their passion and their mission is to help not only the person who's experiencing these losses, but their care partners get the information and the equipment that they need so that they can make their lives simple and successful and maintain their independence. Ladies, thanks for all you do. Thanks for the difference that you make every day in the people that you come in contact with. It is my pleasure to know you. And so please look for this podcast on Aging in Place, Strategies and Answers. And of course, I do have a YouTube channel that it will be posted to as well. By the same name. And then, of course, my website is seniorsupportstrategies.com. And again, aecorner.com has a subscription page. It has and you guys have a YouTube channel as well. What is the name of that?
Our YouTube channel is called Adaptive Equipment Corner.
Well, how about that? So easy.
Making
Making it easy.
simple.
Making it easy for you folks. Thanks so much for listening today, and join me again next time.